Welcome back. Well, let's take the discussion on alcohol abuse forward, and for that we're joined now by the National Liquor Traders Council's Lucky Ntimane. Lucky, good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us. I know that you were listening into some of the panel discussion that we were having, and so many issues that were brought up, some of them of course being around the behavior of our own liquor outlets. I know that you do a lot of work with the taverns in various parts of the country. One big issue has been of course around compliance and what we need to get that right, what we need to get right with that over the festive season. And then here's the reality. A lot of families going to be together in the rural areas, going back home away from Gauteng, and in those areas the tavern becomes the only place for recreation. How do we keep the children out? Lucky, let's tackle that part.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I think liquor traders understand that they operate at the pleasure of the communities in which they have their establishments. Because if you apply for a liquor license, for example, it is the community that grants you that permission to be able to obtain a license. So we do not take that responsibility lightly. Hence, it's incumbent upon us as liquor traders to ensure that if we have a reasonable apprehension that a person entering our establishment, for example, is not of the right legal drinking age, we should demand actually an identification. And I know that this call is being heard by our liquor traders who continue to comply with this important regulation. But we also have a different monster to deal with this festive season, which is the issue of illicit and counterfeit alcohol. We have seen it grow in leaps and bounds in the past 4 years, and now it has reached dangerous levels, where almost 22% of the alcohol volume in South Africa is made up of this illicit and counterfeit alcohol, amounting to somewhat about 25 billion rand. So that is another bigger problem where we call on liquor traders to ensure that the products that they sell within the establishments are of the right legal or they fall within the ambits of what we'll call a right alcohol to sell. Because we have seen, many deaths already. We have seen, a lot of traders falling into the trap of thinking that when they buy something cheaper, it's actually good for their business, and that in turn turns out to be fake alcohol that we don't want to see on our shelves.
Yeah, and that's going to be a big issue. But let's talk a little bit about the issue of compliance. Like, one of the guests that we spoke to made the example of how in one particular community, like Khayelitsha, 11% of the outlets that are there are licensed. We spoke to the Department of Economic Development, and they've got a track and trace of the outlets that are licensed. But what is the track and trace of those that are not?
I think there is communal realities that pertains to the availability of liquor outlets in our township. I'm glad that you made an example of Khayelitsha. So if you look at the Western Cape as an example, the waterfront has got more liquor licenses than all the townships in the Cape Metropole combined. So meaning that the economic activity as far as the alcohol is concerned in that province is concentrated in white areas, predominantly white areas, and not in the black townships. And we continue to have a problem where liquor licenses in that specific province are not being issued to black people. So this is another issue that we've taken up with the government of that province. But we also realize that this is not an excuse for the abuse of alcohol that we've seen across the country. Something needs to be changed, and that's why we're having this type of conversations to ensure that we have the right compliance going towards the festive season. We need to be able to issue licenses to those that are deserving, but on the equal measure, we need to be able to shut down all the outlets that are non-compliant. So we're hoping that the law enforcement officials are going to do their job to ensure that they protect those liquor licenses, those liquor outlets that are meant to be trading, but those shebeens, those that do not have liquor licenses, are going to be shut down. But we also understand that we have a different dynamic in Gauteng where there's a special dispensation where shebeens are allowed to trade. But we know that the liquor law enforcement are on top of this and are going to protect those that have the right to trade in alcohol this festive season.
What do we do about the ills that come as a result of what some experts have said? I suppose there's a trickle-down effect of alcohol abuse in the country. And I don't know if you were able to hear the stat that was shared earlier that we are at number 5 of the highest drinking nation in the world, which is, a startling case. And we heard that between July and September, and this is in Limpopo, so one province, 429 cases of gender-based violence that were reported linked to patrons coming from shebeens in taverns and alcohol outlets. What do we do about that over the festive season? Because here's the reality. Surely the taverns need to have a responsibility over the behavior of their patrons. And if we see crime levels spiking as a result of those businesses operating, that needs to be dealt with, surely.
So we have interrogated the statistics that are being referred to. And actually, when you look at the total figure only 11% of the issues that pertain to gender-based violence can be linked to alcohol. And then we have a problem, the 89% that we need to interact with. I think it's common practice that during this festive season, the culprit is always the liquor traders. If anything go wrong in the country, it's always the liquor traders. If there's car accidents, it's always the liquor traders. So we need to find an instance or a way in which we are going to sit together, civil society and communities, and find a lasting solution, which is far removed from blame game. We need a sustainable strategy as a country to deal with the issue of alcohol abuse, but also we need to look at what are the root causes, what are the causal factors that lends people to want to celebrate by only using alcohol. This can't be. It cannot be that every time when it's festive season, we keep on talking about the same thing. We need a solution that is going to help the country to move forward. The blame game is not going to take us anywhere.
But that solution comes from certainly the stakeholders in a community. The argument can be made that in a rural setting, Mr. Ntimane, sometimes the only recreational activity that's there is that tavern in that particular community. Is there not a responsibility even by that tavern owner to ensure that the behavior is correct there?
You are summing it right, but also government has a role to play. If you look at the issue of Newzroom, where it was established that there were no recreational facilities in the area, certainly that cannot be the responsibility of liquor traders. Government also needs to play their part, but it cannot be that in these instances the alcohol industry is expected to come with a silver bullet to address all the societal issues of the country. We do our part. We sell alcohol in a responsible manner, and unfortunately, the small part of those that consume alcohol do so in an irresponsible manner. But we also have a role to play in our communities. We know someone who, when they're drunk, they get behind the wheel. We have an uncle or a cousin who drinks in an irresponsible manner. So also the responsibility lies with us as community members. What are we doing with those that are around us to ensure that they drink alcohol in a responsible manner? It cannot be left at the door of a tavern owner to ensure that people in South Africa drink responsibly.
Yeah, Ntimane there of the National Liquor Traders Council. Thank you so much for your time. We really do appreciate it. A few WhatsApps that have come in on this discussion, and let's take a look at those. Alfred Lekota at Brits Okasi says, hi Naledi, good evening. Alcohol abuse somewhere is caused by peer pressure among youth and sometimes stress, lack of activities. Also, it is easily accessible. It's advertised as something cool that attracts the majority. It looks alluring. And in the messaging, right, that we give out. Leletu says, good evening to you and your viewers. Alcohol abuse in our country is caused by several factors, but one of the leading factors is that South Africans have made alcohol an escape route from reality, as alcohol is perceived as a source of comfort from the harsh realities of life. And they await you the next morning, of course. Thank you so much for that. Madenza says, good evening. For me, it's not alcohol abuse as such. It is about lawlessness in our country, because anyone can buy and consume alcohol anywhere in public. And again, anyone can sell alcohol anywhere at any time. Our bylaws are not being adhered to. Madenza, thank you so much for sending in that WhatsApp. All right, we're going to take a short break. We've got your headlines at the top of the hour. Stay with us.